Okay then, how are you doing? All right, here we go with, I believe this is session 5, and we're still in chapter 1, and we're going through these things slowly, but that's okay. This section is called Atonement and Miracles. It's section 3, chapter 1. Now, the word atonement can be very heavy. You have to atone for something, okay? In the Course, it's good to think of the atonement as a correction. It's the correction for the belief that I separated from God. I separated from my source. Right? The atonement is the correction for that thought. As they say, it reminds the mind that what it sees is false. Okay, it's the correction. Okay, so we could read it that way. All right, and then Jesus is speaking to Helen, and we'll say something more. I might be repeating myself about Jesus and Helen. Helen was. Jesus is a symbol of that part of our mind that is connected to all that is. It remembers for us the connection, our connection with all that is. Right? And Helen was comfortable with the figure of Jesus. Right? I think she was a little uncomfortable with the idea of connecting with all that is. Right? Because there is a part of our mind, which is the ego part of our mind, that is very afraid of that connection. Because the ego self doesn't know anything about God or anything, but all it knows is that it's threatened. Its very existence is threatened by non-duality, all right? By a connection with all that is very threatening to a thought system that believes in separation and individuality, okay? And so you take it a little bit at a time, all right? It's like entering a cold lake or a cold ocean, right? In the summertime, and it's very cold water, and so you go in a little, you go in a little more, and eventually you're in there having a good time, okay? So Jesus is the figure that we use in the Course, all right, to represent the right mind, so to speak, to represent who we really are, the memory of who we are. Right? We also call that the Holy Spirit. And later on in the book, Jesus will even say, I am the manifestation of the Holy Spirit. So I am in form, the memory of who you are. Right? That's why he speaks to us. Don't treat me as anything special. I'm like you. I'm just half a step ahead. All right? And I'm like your brother. I'm going to help you through this. And there's some very beautiful passages later on in the Course where Jesus talks about helping us. And he says, if it helps you, imagine yourself holding my hand, and I assure you, this will be no idle fantasy. I always love that line. It's one of my favorites. So let's continue. Jesus says, I am in charge of the process of atonement. Right? I'm in charge of the process of correction, which I undertook to begin. When you offer a miracle to any of my brothers, you do it to yourself and me. The reason you come before me is that I do not need miracles for my own atonement. Right? But I stand at the end in case you fail temporarily. My part in the atonement is the canceling out of all errors that you could not otherwise correct. When you have been restored to the recognition of your original state, you naturally become part of the atonement yourself. As you share my unwillingness to accept error in yourself and others, You must join the great crusade to correct it. Listen to my voice. Learn to undo error and act to correct it. The power to work miracles belongs to you. I will provide the opportunities to do them, but you must be ready and willing. Doing them will bring conviction in the ability, because conviction comes through accomplishment. The ability is the potential. The achievement is its expression. And the atonement, which is the natural profession of the children of God, is the purpose. The ability is potential, the achievement is its expression, and the atonement is the purpose. All right? Let's just go over that a little. Okay. He says, I'm in charge of the atonement, which I undertook to begin. All right, Jesus is always going to remind us, ask me first before you think you know what you're going to do. All right, check in with me. And it's not an elaborate process. All right, it's not a formal prayer. As Dr. Wapnick once said, can you say help? All right, it's just a desire to have your and my interpretation of the situation corrected. Right? And it needs correcting if I'm afraid, if I'm angry, if I'm upset, if I'm reacting in any other way but love, then I need a correct perception. I need my perception corrected. Right? And Jesus is that part of the mind that in the metaphysics of the Course, and it has puts into words, like the beginning of the ego thought system. The beginning was the belief. First there was the tiny mad idea. Oh, I could be an individual. I could be separate from God. I could do whatever He does. Right? He never recognizes me. What's with that? Right? He never recognizes me. So I think I could be separate. That tiny mad idea split the mind into two thought systems. The ego thought system and the right-minded thought system, or the thought system of Holy Spirit. Right? And then we, as a decision-making mind, had to make a choice. Right? And we chose to believe that we could separate from our source, the tiny mad idea. And so the mind automatically becomes afraid of repercussions from God. Oh no, you ruined oneness, now He's going to get you. And boom, we burst out. That's like the Course's idea of the Big Bang. Jesus represents the part of the mind that looked at the ego and said, I don't think so. That's ridiculous. All right? And went back to the right mind. All right? And He is part of us. He is part of our mind. All right? And that part of the mind, that memory, came with us into this experience, let's say. The Course will call it a dream. All right? Once again, the Course says, you are at home in God, dreaming of exile. Right? So this whole thing is a dream. Right? We're not up to that, or I'm not up to that point where I recognize that I am a lucid dreamer. Right? But that's what practicing forgiveness is all about. That's what having my perception corrected is all about. That's what the atonement is all about, is practicing it day upon day, until I get to the awareness that, oh, I never left. I'm at home, surrounded by love, surrounded by bliss, right? Invulnerable, all those things. But practice will get me back there, all right? So, Jesus says He undertook the atonement. He was the first one to say, no, that thought is corrected. All right? He says, whenever you offer a miracle to any brothers, you do it to yourself and me. He says, the reason you come before me is because it says you do it to yourself and me. He says, the reason you come before me is because I don't need a miracle. All right? I don't need a miracle for my own atonement. I'm there already. All right? I'm here to help you. But I stand at the end in case you fail temporarily. All right? And each word, like a poet, chooses each word like a painter. All right? They choose each color specifically. Each word is chosen specifically. All right? And he says, but I stand at the end in case you fail temporarily. All right? Which means you can never eternally fail. All right? And at one point he will reassure us that once the process is begun, the end is certain. All right? And the end is the recognition of who you are, right? The recognition of where you are, the recognition of what you are, right? Which is an extension of love, right? In the mind of God. Right? And once again, remember that we're in a condition where we use words to approximate these things, all right? Words cannot really completely describe the experience, the personal experience of revelation, or the personal experience of the right mind. Right? And he says, my part in the atonement is canceling out all the errors that you could not otherwise correct. Right? So without saying there must be a better way, all right? Without questioning the ego, we would be running around within the ego thought system trying to correct what we think are errors. There's something missing in me. I'll go do that. That will fill up the void. Oh, there's something wrong with me. I'll do that to either cover it up or make myself stronger or better. Or, there's always an error somewhere. Right? But without reaching outside of the ego thought system and asking Jesus, could you help me to change my perception, please? All right? And you can use whatever words you like. Help me to see through your eyes. Show me what love looks like in this situation. What does peace look like? All right? Yesterday I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, well, sometimes I say to Jesus, you told me happiness is my birthright. Right? But so I want it. Right? So you can use those words. Jesus, I would like to be happy. But you can't be happy unless you allow everybody else to be happy too. All right? I would like to be happy. And yes, it's okay if everyone else is happy too. Even that person I just spent the last 20 minutes disliking intensely. All right? I will include him. Thank you. Yes, he's allowed to be happy. Because if he was happy, it wouldn't be a pain in my butt, right? And if I was happy, I wouldn't be interpreting that way. Okay. So Jesus says, I cancel out all the errors that you could not otherwise correct. In other words, we would be using ego solutions within the ego thought system to correct these ego problems, all right? Perceived problems. All right? And Jesus will always remind us there's really only one problem, and that's the belief that you separated from God. And so there's one correction, which is the atonement principle. And the correction is you never separated from God. And once we get to that realization, perception change. It changes dramatically. And you get to where he says, when you have been restored to the recognition of your original state, you naturally become part of the atonement yourself. So when the ego has been undone, right? When all the errors that we perceive have been corrected, right, we get back to our original state, which is communion, union with our Creator, union with God, the first cause, union with all that is. You naturally become part of the atonement yourself. As you share my willingness to accept error in yourself, my unwillingness, Freudian slip, as you share my unwillingness to accept error in yourself and others, you must join the great crusade to correct it. So, he says, when he's talking about undoing the error, right, listen to my voice, learn to undo the error, and act to correct it. He's not talking about going on a great crusade to point out people's errors and correct them. You know, you're always late. Wake up a half hour early. Whatever it is that we perceive as their error, it's not what he's talking about. Right? We're not to go pointing out everybody else's errors. All right? We're going to undo the error at its source, and that's the mind. That's the mind that makes the choice to believe that it's separated from God. That's the original error. That's the crusade we're on, okay? Because when we undo that error, right, minds are joined, we're helping to undo the error in everyone else's mind, and we get to see past, in form, we get to see past the form, whatever the error, whatever their error is, whatever their mistake is, we get to see past it to who they are. All right? We get to see there's actually light in them. All right? And we answer their error with our corrected perception, all right? Which is love. All right? In whatever form it will take. All right? And Jesus will tell us later on that the answer will come in a language that you understand. So whatever fits the form, because we think we're specific. When we connect with the holy instant that we'll learn about, right? When we connect with Jesus or Holy Spirit, that connection, we become a channel. And we become a channel for the grace. He's going to use that word later on here. Or love. And that grace will take the form of the situation, whatever the situation calls for, be it an action or a word or something. Right? It will be coming from a place of love. Right? So, he says, you must join the great crusade to correct it. So what he means by being unwilling to accept error in yourself, that doesn't mean that I go around and say, oh, you know, I shouldn't have done that. How could I do that? How could I say that? I've been studying this course for so long. All right? He's not talking about that. Right? What he's talking about is you realize, oh, I'm listening to the ego. I'm listening to the ego as my guide. Right? That's the error. And being unwilling to accept the ego thought system. Say, no, I don't want that anymore. I've been down that road so many times. Right? It never ends peacefully. Or, shall I say, in a lasting peace. Right? So that's being unwilling to accept the error in myself. And it's just, you know, I'm not castigating myself. I'm not calling myself names. It's just realizing, oh, I've been listening to the ego as my guide, and I don't want that anymore. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of the conflict. I'm tired of the chaos. Right? And I want something else. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what the form looks like. All I know is that I want that peace. All right? And that's what I'm asking for. Help me to see this person or this situation. Help me to see it differently. Help me to see it correctly. All right? There you go. And when he says to undo the error and act to correct it, all right, that's acting to correct it is actually asking, help me to see correctly. And then if you're guided to do something or say something, you will. All right? The power to work miracles belongs to you. I will provide the opportunities to do them, but you must be ready and willing. And that's what it is. He'll always say it takes a little willingness to call on the Holy Spirit, to be ready and willing. I'm willing. I'm willing to see everybody happy. Right? I'm just willing to see peace. Right? And I'm ready. I'm ready for the correction. And he says, I'll provide them, all right? Because Jesus is always present in our mind. All right? So, doing them will bring conviction in the ability. So, it's like anything else. If you want to work out, you're going to build the muscle. All right? Doing it brings conviction that the muscle's getting stronger. You can see it. All right? Entering that holy instant and asking for your perception to be corrected. He says, when you realize, oh, wow, that worked. That wasn't the solution I was thinking of. Or I feel peaceful. I'm no longer angry. Where did that anger go? Or whatever it is, fear. Even though we might grab it back, but momentarily it was gone. And he says, that will give you the conviction and the ability. You'll see it works. You will see that it works. All right? It will bring conviction in the ability because conviction comes through accomplishment. All right? He says, the ability to change your mind, the ability to have your perception changed is the potential. Everyone has that potential. The achievement is the expression. All right? And the expression is the connecting with that right mind, desiring to have your perception changed. That's the expression, what comes through you. All right? And the atonement, the correction, which is the natural profession of the children of God, is the purpose. And the purpose of our functioning in this world doing that, right, is the correction of the ego's thought system, the correction of the original error. Right? That is the purpose. That is our purpose. Right? To bring that with us. And this is a nice one, paragraph 2. Heaven and earth shall pass away. It means they will not continue to exist as separate states. Think about that. My word, which is the resurrection and the life, shall not pass away because life is eternal. You are the work of God, and his work is wholly lovable and wholly loving. This is how a man must think of himself in his heart, because this is what he is. Now, of course, remember this day and age, right? We hear the word, this is how a man must think. It includes everyone, okay? It includes all of humankind, all right? Remember, this is coming through the filter of Helen Schuckman, all right, in the 60s, all right? A logical, clinical psychologist who loved Shakespeare, all those things, all right? She loved the New Testament, but she didn't know much about the Old Testament. But she was, she said she was an avowed atheist, right? She didn't particularly believe in God, but I think she had a nanny that used to bring her to church, and I think it was Baptist church. I could be, correct me if I'm wrong. But she would love those hymns and the sermons and the reading the New Testament, right? So this is the filter through which this is coming, right? And if you have a problem with the male pronouns, then it's something you could talk to Jesus about. Say, well, hey, what's up with that? All right. But he says, heaven and earth shall pass away. And he says that means they won't continue to exist as separate states. Right? When our perception is corrected enough, we will start to meld. All right? You'll see that they'll use the expression later on. You'll be on the lawns of heaven. You'll be in the real world. Right? It's not exactly heaven. It's a precursor. But that's when heaven and earth won't exist as separate states, right? Because the separation will be healed. Right? And then there's the unity with God, which is indescribable. Right? So, and then he reminds us, you are the work of God. Right? You are the work of God. If you think anything else, if you think you're less than being lovable, right? If you think you're less than wholly loving, you can bring that thought to Jesus and say, could you help me? Help me correct my perception of myself. Right? And believe me, it's not arrogance to think that you are wholly loving and you are love. Right? We're taught especially in the Western world, to what do you think you're better than us? Don't think that way. That's arrogant. All that. We always get those messages. Who do you think you are? Right? If I walked into my house and said, I am love, everybody would just be rolling their eyes. My areas again. All right? But that's who you are. That's who I am. You are that, as Gangaji would say. You are that. Let's look at paragraph 3. The forgiven, all right, those who have their perception changed and they no longer see through the filter of sin, guilt, and fear, oh, I separated from God, I ruined heaven, I feel bad about it, and I'm going to be punished. Sin, guilt, and fear, all right? The forgiven are the means of the atonement. So when I have my original perception of myself changed, then I become the means. Just as right now for me and for the Course, Jesus is the means of the atonement. Right? We aspire to become Him. Right? We aspire to have our faulty vision corrected. We aspire to have that mistake corrected. The mistake was I believed I was separated from God. All right? So the forgiven are the means of the atonement. Being filled with Spirit, they forgive in return. And most likely some of you have experienced that in that state, what they call the stately calm within, in that holy instant. All right? You enter that spaciousness, right? You enter that spaciousness where Jesus resides in our mind, the Holy Spirit resides in our mind. Right? And when we return to our life, so to speak, our experiences in the world, we're more forgiving. We are forgiving. In other words, we understand. We're not pointing that out. We're not condemning someone. We're not projecting guilt onto them. We realize that whatever they're doing doing because they think they're not lovable. They think they're lacking love. Right? They think there's something missing in their life. You know, they think they're the innocent victim of something. Right? And they, you know, there's all different ways to work out of those concepts. All right? And eventually we will, you know, ask, help me to see this correctly. But as we're looking upon others, we are understanding, we are compassionate, we answer with love. Whatever it's either, they say in the Holy Spirit's judgment, whatever a person is doing or saying, it's either an extension of love or a call for love that they think is lacking. So whatever, either one, our answer is love. And first we go to Jesus. Jesus, could you show me what love looks like? I don't want to be in charge of figuring out what love looks like for somebody else. Okay? That's like the hairdresser, you know, like I said before. You tell them how you want your hair cut and they do exactly what they want. No, this is what you need. All right? I don't want to be that one that says, no, this is what you need. You know what you need to do? What we need to do is ask Jesus first. Say, what does love look like? That's all. I just want to experience peace. Thank you. All right. So the forgiven are the means of the atonement. Being filled with Spirit, they forgive in return. Those who are released must join in releasing their brothers, for this is the plan of the atonement. Miracles are the way in which minds that serve the Holy Spirit unite with me for the salvation or the release of all of God's creations. I said, and this is the way it goes. We unite with Jesus. We are willing to see things correctly. We're willing to be happy and allow everyone to be happy. And that spreads, right? We release others, right? In the mind. We release others of guilt. Right? They may continue to behave the way they behave, but we have released the guilt. Right? We're not projecting guilt onto them. Right? And incrementally, that grows. Right? Because we believe in increments. Right? Okay. So miracles are the way in which minds that serve the Holy Spirit unite with me for the salvation or release of all of God's creations. I am the only one who can perform miracles indiscriminately because I am the atonement. Right? Jesus is the correction. So I provide the changes in perception. He says, you have a role in the atonement, which I will dictate to you. And here's where he's formally telling us, through Helen, ask me which miracles you should perform. All right? In other words, what does love look like in this situation? All right? Help me to see correctly. That's asking which miracles should be performed. Otherwise, I think I know what everybody else needs. Okay? So, he says, ask me which miracles you should perform. This spares you needless effort because you will be acting under direct communication. The impersonal nature of the miracle is an essential ingredient because it enables me to direct its application. And under my guidance, miracles lead to the highly personal experience of revelation. Right? So he says the miracle it's impersonal. Right? So all I really want is peace of mind. Right? And you could substitute other words which all will get us to the same place. You know, I want to see happiness. I want to experience happiness. I want to experience peace. I want to experience kindness. Right? All those things that's being impersonal about it. Right? It's not being specific. Right? I think, that I need this to be changed. I need my bank account to be changed. All right? All right? Instead of just saying, I want to experience peace. All right? I want to experience happiness. All right? That's asking Jesus what miracle should be performed. Because it will come through you. Right? It will come through you, just as it came through in the prayer of St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Right? And that's it. I'll go around. Whatever needs to be supplied, it will come from your peace. And that spares you needless effort, which I'm always up for. Somebody to spare me needless effort. All right. So, a guide does not control, but he does direct, leaving it up to you to follow. Lead us not into temptation means recognize your errors and choose to abandon them by following my guidance. Right? So, I'm just asking Jesus to guide me. Right? Because otherwise, I will lead myself into temptation. Right? I will be tempted to believe that I'm separated from God, right? Because that ego thought system, like I say, it doesn't know anything about God, really. All it knows is that its existence is threatened. Right? So it sneaks in there. It's very clever. Right? It's very, very clever. Comes in the back door, waiting for you around the corner. Right? All we have to do is, that's my ego. No, I don't want that. Help me to see correctly. Okay. So, paragraph 5 on page 9, error cannot really threaten truth, which can always withstand it. Only the error is actually vulnerable. Right? I was just saying. The ego is actually vulnerable, and it doesn't know where it's coming from. It just knows that it's about to be dissolved. Like the witch in the Wizard of Oz, it's melting. Right? So it's always afraid of disappearing, being obliterated. Right? And it will be when we practice enough times, and we feel the efficacy of going to the Holy Spirit. Right? And it's such a comfortable place to be that we'll want to be there. And eventually, the day will come when we make that, or the moment will come, I should say, when we make that final decision, it says, no more. No more do I believe in separation from God. I don't want that. Then the ego will be dissolved. Right? Because truth can't be threatened. Remember we said that he repeats things in different ways all through the course. So only error is actually vulnerable. You are free to establish your kingdom where you see fit, but the right choice is inevitable if you remember this. Spirit is in a state of grace forever. Your reality is only spirit. Therefore, you are in a state of grace forever. No matter what you think, no matter what you believe, this is the truth which can't be assailed, right? It's not vulnerable. This truth is not vulnerable. It can't be destroyed. It can't be chipped away at, right? You are in a state of grace forever, right? Spirit is in a state of grace forever. Your reality is only spirit. Right? It's not this. Right? It's not form. It's spirit. So therefore, you are in a state of grace forever. It's the same as saying you are at home in God, dreaming of exile. And at one point, my friend Patty likes this line, your other life continues. Right? You think you're living this one, your other life continues. Your life in heaven. Right? So you'll hear the echo of the initial statement, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. And this is what he's saying. Error cannot really threaten truth. So the belief in separation, you could believe it, but it doesn't threaten the truth. It doesn't change the truth. And when he says you can establish your kingdom wherever you want, he's saying you can establish your kingdom in the ego thought system or in the right mind. All right, the choice, you make the choice. All right? He says, but the right choice is inevitable if you remember that you are always in a state of grace. You are spirit. Right? And spirit is always in a state of grace. So if you remember that, you'll make the right choice. The thing is, most of us forget. All right? But he's here to help us. Okay? So, atonement undoes all errors in this respect, and thus uproots the source of fear. Right? Atonement, the correction, undoes all errors. Right? And that means all the errors that come from the original one, which says, oh, I separated from God. All right? So the atonement undoes all those errors, and thus it uproots the source of fear. Right? The source of fear is, oh, I left the oneness. The source of fear is, I did something wrong, the sin. I feel bad about that. I feel horrible. What did I do? You know, something's wrong. Right? And then there's the fear of reprisal. Because we automatically start projecting onto our source. We automatically project onto God that God is the angry one now. Not me. I wasn't angry because I wanted to be an individual and God wouldn't let me. All right? Now we say there's an angry God who's out to get me. And we project out of the mind. Boom, right? It burst into bazillion pieces, right? And, it's like they said in Genesis in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve ate the apple, and they said, oh no, what did I do? Right? Because they hear God coming through, right? And what did they do? They ran and hid amongst the trees. That's the same as what we do. In the original, we thought we, ate the apple, the tree of knowledge. Oh, all right, I did something wrong. I thought I could separate from God. Right? And then I ran. I jumped out into this universe, which is the equivalent of hiding amongst the trees. The only thing is, I use the trees to figure, well, if God comes, I can say, no, it wasn't me, it was that tree. He did that. He's the one that separated, not me. That's the projection of guilt. Okay, but I digress. All right. So atonement undoes all errors, and thus uproots the source of fear. The source of fear, the belief in separation. All right? If I didn't think I was separated from God, I wouldn't be afraid. So the atonement undoes that error. All right? Whenever you experience God's reassurance as a threat, it is always because you are defending misplaced or misdirected loyalty. All right? So whenever we feel that threat, like we're doomed, we're going to be punished, there's something out to get us, even if you go into a state of prayer and you're afraid of the God you're about to encounter, there's a lot of angry stuff going on in that Old Testament, let me tell you. All right? But he says, when you feel that way, when you feel that as a threat, it's because you're defending a misplaced or misdirected loyalty. So my loyalty has been misplaced. I put it in the ego thought system, which automatically tells me on some level, in some form, God is going to get you. Don't go next to him. Don't go near love. Love is out to destroy you. It's going to trick you. All right? God is going to trick you. All right? Don't trust him. All right? So that's a misplaced loyalty. I'm loyal to the ego. All right? So when you project this to others, you imprison them. So when I feel that guilt and that fear, and my ego says, no, here's the way to get rid of it. Project it. Throw it onto that person. All right? This way, if God comes into the garden and you're hiding behind a tree, you can always say, it wasn't me. It was her. She did it. She made me eat that apple. All right? And we do that with everybody. All right? We populate the universe with people and things and all kinds of organisms and whatnot that we can assign the blame. It wasn't me, it was that. It was her, it was him. Right? I was just walking along peacefully, minding my own business, and he made me angry. Right? That's because you've misplaced your loyalty. You're believing in the separation. Right? And that's projection. I believe it's the first time in the book now that Jesus mentions that word. Right? I'm not sure. You can, as I say, correct me. Send me messages, please. All right. And projection is a Freudian concept, and Helen was a very accomplished and strict Freudian psychologist. Projection was when we we'll explain it again. We see something internally, we perceive something internally that we don't like, we repress it, we push it down. No, it's not me. It's not me. But eventually you have to get rid of it. You project it. You throw it out onto somebody else. So when you project this guilt onto others, you imprison them. You say, they're the guilty ones. They're the ones who started the separation. Right? So you imprison them. Right? But only to the extent to which you reinforce errors they've already made. Right? So what we're doing is we're encountering others who believe in the separation. Right? And what we're doing is reinforcing that in them. Right? You're an idiot. Right? Maybe the guy thinks already he's an idiot, which is that's not nice, but that's what we do. We call each other names. We reinforce the idea there's something wrong with you. Something wrong with you. Right? You don't deserve love. Right? So we're reinforcing that idea that is deep down inside anyway. And so we're imprisoning not only them, but ourselves, because we're reinforcing the thought system. All right? Starting to see how this works. All right? And when we do that, it makes them vulnerable to distortions of others, since their own perception of themselves is distorted. All right? So we're only making things worse. All right? The miracle worker can only bless them. And this undoes their distortions and frees them from prison. That's a wonderful concept, right? When we go to the right mind, when we go to Jesus and Holy Spirit and ask, help me to see correctly. Help me to see this person. Help me to see this group. Help me to see this situation correctly, because I've been projecting guilt onto them and all kinds of faults. Help me to see them correctly. Right? I want to experience peace. Right? And I want them to be peaceful too. They have to be included. Right? This is about inclusion, not separation. All right? The ego separates and keeps separating and finds reasons to defend the separation. The Holy Spirit includes, Jesus includes, right? It includes everyone, right? Because the love is invulnerable, right? So the miracle worker can only bless them. And by blessing them, we mean that I see them correctly. I know that the light of God is in them. I perceive that. I see past whatever machinations are going on. Right. And this undoes their distortions. Right. They may continue to act out, but the correction is in the bank for them, so to speak. They can tap into it whenever they want. Right. And it frees them from prison. All right. They now have the key. They always had the key. It's getting closer to their awareness. Okay. So paragraph 6, you respond to what you perceive. And as you perceive, so shall you behave. Right? Because we're in this world of perception. Right? So I respond to what I perceive. Right? I translate it. Wow, this is what's happening. I remember the powerful exercise we used to do in massage school. I perceive and I imagine. All right? I see this and I think this is what's going on. All right? And then, you know, after the 5-10 minute session is over, the other person tells you what's really going on. All right? So you respond to what you perceive. And as you perceive, so shall you behave. The golden rule asks you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This means that the perception of both must be accurate. The golden rule is the rule for appropriate behavior. You cannot behave appropriately unless you perceive correctly. Since you and your neighbor are equal members of one family, as you perceive both, so will you do to both. You should look out from the perception of your own holiness to the holiness of others. All right. What? Okay. So the golden rule asks you to do unto others, right? This means that perception of both must be accurate. And what that means is, in order to get an accurate perception of both myself and the other, it's in my mind. Always, the correction is in my mind. I ask, help me to see correctly. Right. In other words, I want to see the innocence. I want to see the innocence. I'm willing to see the other's innocence. And in so doing, I see my own innocence. Right? I want to see correctly. Right? I want to see that part of God that's in them. And I get to see the part of God that's in me. All right? So this way, the perception of both are accurate. Right? And then I have done unto others what I would like them to do unto me. All right? But it's okay if they take a little while. All right? I am, correcting my perception of both in my mind. All right? I see both accurately. You cannot behave appropriately unless you perceive correctly. Right? So you're going to be acting in the ego thought system. Right? You're going to be getting ego solutions to perceived imagined problems unless we go to the holy instant and ask, can help me see correctly. Help me to see correctly. Right? And you will be looking out on others from the perception of your own holiness, right, to the holiness of others. Right? Miracles arise from a mind that is ready for them. By being united, this mind goes out to everyone, even without the awareness of the miracle worker himself. The impersonal nature of miracles is because the atonement itself is one, uniting all creatures with their creator, all creations, with their creator. As an expression of what you truly are, the miracle places the mind in a state of grace. The mind then naturally welcomes the host within and the stranger without. When you bring in the stranger, he becomes your brother. All right? So the miracle arises from the mind that is ready for them. All right? And sometimes it takes a lot of anguish to become ready. All right? Jesus says there's a lot of roads, and on some you travel gaily for a while. Perhaps you'd like to try them all. Until you see that they all end the same way. All right? So then your mind becomes ready for the change in perception. All right? And the mind becomes ready. All right? And Jesus is telling us that the mind is one. All minds are united as one mind. All right? It goes out to everyone. All right? This makes the impersonal nature of the miracle. Because it just goes out to the one mind. That change in perception, it has that ripple effect in the mind. Okay. And then the impersonal nature of miracles is because the atonement itself is one. And what it's doing, it's uniting all the creations with their creator. We are a creation of God. And when they talk about creations here, it's the emanations of love, right? The emanations of bliss, right? The emanations of invulnerability, of safety, right? Of just being ultimately comfortable, right? No threats, just emanating love. Those are the creations. You are part of that. Right? That's ultimately all you are. You are the emanation of all that. Right? And what we're doing here is trying to remove the blocks to the awareness of that you are the emanation of the original source, the emanation of God. Right? And what we're doing here is noticing when I'm in the ego, oh, I don't want that anymore. I want to remove that block to the awareness of love's presence. Right? So the mind then naturally becomes, it welcomes the host within. So my mind will welcome Holy Spirit, Jesus, and the entry into reality. Right? I will welcome that. Right? And when you bring in the stranger, he becomes your brother. So I welcome everyone. Right? And then we're brothers. We're just all of the same family. So, paragraph 8. The miracle may have effects on your brothers that you may not recognize. It's start again. That the miracle may have effects on your brothers that you may not recognize is not your concern. Right? So we don't need to be concerned with the outcome. All we know is that we want to perceive correctly. All right? So that the miracle may have effects on your brothers that you may not recognize is not your concern. The miracle will always bless you. All right? So that change in perception is always a blessing for us. All right? Miracles you are not asked to perform have not lost their value. They are still expressions of your own state of grace. But the action aspect of the miracle should be controlled by me because of my complete awareness of the whole plan. The impersonal nature of miracle-mindedness ensures your grace, but only I am in a position to know where that can be bestowed. All right? So once again, Jesus is saying, just enter that state, right? And allow those emanations of love to come through you. And don't worry about where they go or what they do. At one point Jesus was talking to Helen. I think she was having a situation where she was counseling someone, and Jesus told her, don't ask me what to say. Don't ask me what to say to this person. Ask me, how can I see them? How can I see them innocent? How can I see them as innocent? How can I see them as they truly are? And then the emanations come through you and they'll take a form that fits the situation. All right? So, paragraph 9. Miracles are selective only in the sense that they are directed toward those who can use them for themselves. Since this makes it inevitable that they will extend them to others, a strong chain of atonement is welded. However, this selectivity takes no account of the magnitude of the miracle itself, because the concept of size exists on a plane that is itself unreal. Since the miracle aims at restoring the awareness of reality, it would not be useful if it were bound by laws that govern the error it aims to correct. So once again, simply put, he's saying there is no order of difficulty in miracles. Once I ask, help me to see correctly. Once I connect with that stately calm within, the expression of love, those emanations of love, are maximal. There's no gradation. They're maximal and they fit the situation. It takes no account of the magnitude of the miracle itself. All right? He says it would be silly, because the miracle just aims at restoring the awareness of reality, right? The awareness of the fact that we exist in and we are made up of love. That's the awareness of reality. Right? So it wouldn't be useful if the miracle were bound by laws of size and distance and time and space and things like that. Okay. I think we can end it there today. And once again, I thank everybody for being here. And I encourage you to communicate with me if you have any questions, about what was said or anything. All right, I'm available. Just message me on my page there. All right, and once again, if you really want to go deeper, you can always contact the Course in Miracles, Foundation for A Course in Miracles in Henderson, Nevada. And their website is all lowercase, FACIM.org. They have just a treasure trove of information. All right, everybody, Be happy, and I'll talk to you soon, okay? All righty then.